Kazakhstan, in local languages, officially the Republic of Kazakhstan, is a transcontinental country mainly located in Central Asia with a smaller portion west of the Ural River in Eastern Europe. It covers a land area of, and shares land borders with Russia in the north, China in the east, and Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan in the south, while also adjoining a large part of the Caspian Sea in the southwest. Kazakhstan does not border Mongolia, although they are only 37 kilometers apart. Kazakhstan is the world's largest landlocked country, and the 9th largest country in the world. It has a population of 18.8 million residents, and has one of the lowest population densities in the world, at fewer than 6 people per square kilometer, 15 people per square miles. Since 1997, the capital is Nur-Sultan, formerly known as Astana. It was moved from Almaty, the country's largest city. The territory of Kazakhstan has historically been inhabited by nomadic groups and empires. In antiquity, the nomadic Scythians inhabited the land, and the Persian Achaemenid Empire expanded towards the southern territory of the modern country. Turkic nomads, who trace their ancestry to many Turkic states such as the First and Second Turkic Khaganates, have inhabited the country throughout its history. In the 13th century, the territory was subjugated by the Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan. By the 16th century, the Kazakh emerged as a distinct group, divided into 3 Jews. The Russians began advancing into the Kazakh steppe in the 18th century, and by the mid-19th century, they nominally ruled all of Kazakhstan as part of the Russian Empire. Following the 1917 Russian Revolution, and subsequent civil war, the territory of Kazakhstan was reorganized several times. In 1936, it was made the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic. Part of the Soviet Union, Kazakhstan was the last of the Soviet republics to declare independence during the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. The first president of Kazakhstan was characterized as an authoritarian, and his government was accused of numerous human rights violations, including suppression of dissent and censorship of the media. Human Rights Watch says that Kazakhstan heavily restricts freedom of assembly, speech, and religion. Other human rights organizations regularly describe Kazakhstan's human rights situation as poor. Kazakhstan is the most dominant nation of Central Asia economically, generating 60% of the region's GDP, primarily through its oil and gas industry. It also has vast mineral resources. Kazakhstan is a member of the United Nations UN, WTO, CIS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO, the Eurasian Economic Union, CSTO, OS, OIC, CETS, the Turkic Council and Turksoy.
Etymology.
The name Kazakh comes from the ancient Turkic word, to wander, reflecting the Kazakhs' nomadic culture. The term Cossack is of the same origin.
History.
Kazakhstan has been inhabited since the Paleolithic era. Pastoralism developed during the Neolithic, as the region's climate and terrain are best suited for a nomadic lifestyle. The Kazakh territory was a key constituent of the Eurasian trading steppe route, the ancestor of the terrestrial Silk Roads. Archaeologists believe that humans first domesticated the horse, i.e., ponies in the region's vast steppes. During recent prehistoric times, Central Asia was inhabited by groups such as the possibly Proto-Indo-European Ifanisva culture, later early Indo-Iranian cultures such as Andronovo, and later Indo-Iranians such as the Saka and Masagti. Other groups included the nomadic Scythians and the Persian Achaemenid Empire in the southern territory of the modern country. In 329 BC, Alexander the Great and his Macedonian army fought in the Battle of Jaxartes against the Scythians along the Jaxartes River, now known as the Sirdaria, along the southern border of modern Kazakhstan.
Kazakh Khanate.
The Cuman entered the steppes of modern-day Kazakhstan around the early 11th century, where they later joined with the Kipchak and established the vast Cuman-Kipchak Confederation. While ancient cities Tarat-Zolyat and Hazrati Turkestan had long served as important way stations along the Silk Road connecting Asia and Europe, true political consolidation began only with the Mongol rule of the early 13th century. Under the Mongol Empire, the largest in world history, administrative districts were established. These eventually came under the rule of the emergent Kazakh Khanate Kazakhstan. Throughout this period, traditional nomadic life and a livestock-based economy continued to dominate the steppe. In the 15th century, a distinct Kazakh identity began to emerge among the Turkic tribes. This was followed by the Kazakh War of Independence, where the Khanate gained its sovereignty from the Shaybanids. The process was consolidated by the mid-16th century with the appearance of the Kazakh language, culture, and economy. Nevertheless, the region was the focus of ever-increasing disputes between the native Kazakh emirs and the neighboring Persian-speaking peoples to the south. At its height, the Khanate would rule parts of Central Asia and control Cumania. By the early 17th century, the Kazakh Khanate was struggling with the impact of tribal rivalries, which had effectively divided the population into the great, middle and little or small hordes Jews, political disunion, tribal rivalries, and the diminishing importance of overland trade routes between east and west weakened the Kazakh Khanate. Khiva Khanate used this opportunity and annexed main Ishluk Peninsula. Uzbek rule that lasted 2 centuries until the Russian arrival. During the 17th century, the Kazakhs fought Oirats, a federation of western Mongol tribes, including the Dzunga. The beginning of the 18th century marked the zenith of the Kazakh Khanate. During this period the little horde participated in the 1723–1730 war against the Dzunga Khanate, following their great disaster invasion of Kazakh territories, under the leadership of Abul Khair Khan. The Kazakh won major victories over the Dzunga at the Bulanti River in 1726, and at the Battle of Vanrakai in 1729. Ablai Khan participated in the most significant battles against the Dzunga from the 1720s to the 1750s, for which he was declared a hero by the people. The Kazakhs suffered from the frequent raids against them by the Volga Khamik. The Kokand Khanate used the weakness of Kazakh Juzs after Dzunga and Khamik raids and conquered present southeastern Kazakhstan, including Almaty, the formal capital, in the first quarter of the 19th century. Also, the Emirate of Bukhara ruled Shymkent before the Russians took dominance.
Russian Empire.
In the first half of the 18th century, the Russian Empire constructed the Irtish Line, a series of 46 forts and 96 redoubts, including Omsk 1716, Semipalatinsk 1718, Pavlodar 1720, Omberg 1743 and Petropavlovsk 1752, to prevent Kazakh and Oirat raids into Russian territory. In the late 18th century the Kazakhs took advantage of Pugachev's rebellion, which was centered on the Volgan area, to raid Russian and Volga-German settlements. In the 19th century, the Russian Empire began to expand its influence into Central Asia. The Great Game period is generally regarded as running from approximately 1813 to the Anglo-Russian Convention of 1907. The Tsars effectively ruled over most of the territory belonging to what is now the Republic of Kazakhstan. The Russian Empire introduced a system of administration and built military garrisons and barracks in its effort to establish a presence in Central Asia in the so-called Great Game for dominance in the area against the British Empire, which was extending its influence from the south in India and Southeast Asia. Russia built its first outpost, Orsk, in 1735. Russia introduced the Russian language in all schools and governmental organizations. Russian efforts to impose its system aroused the resentment by the Kazakh people, and, by the 1860s, some Kazakhs resisted Russia's rule. It had disrupted the traditional nomadic lifestyle and livestock-based economy, and people were suffering from hunger and starvation, with some Kazakh tribes being decimated. The Kazakh national movement, which began in the late 19th century, sought to preserve the native language and identity by resisting the attempts of the Russian Empire to assimilate and stifle them. From the 1890s onward, ever larger numbers of settlers from the Russian Empire began colonizing the territory of present-day Kazakhstan, in particular, the province of Semirachai. The number of settlers rose still further once the Trans-Aral Railway from Omberg to Tashkent was completed in 1906. A specially created migration department, In St. Petersburg oversaw and encouraged the migration to expand Russian influence in the area. During the 19th century about 400,000 Russians immigrated to Kazakhstan, and about 1 million Slavs, Germans, Jews, and others immigrated to the region during the first third of the 20th century. Vasil Balabanov was the administrator responsible for the resettlement during much of this time. The competition for land and water that ensued between the Kazakh and the newcomers caused great resentment against colonial rule during the final years of the Russian Empire. The most serious uprising, the Central Asian Revolt, occurred in 1916. The Kazakh attacked Russian and Cossack settlers and military garrisons. The revolt resulted in a series of clashes and in brutal massacres committed by both sides. Both sides resisted the communist government until late 1919.
Soviet Union.
Following the collapse of central government in Petrograd in November 1917, the Kazakhs, then in Russia officially referred to as Kyrgyz, experienced a brief period of autonomy, the Alash autonomy, to eventually succumb to the Bolsheviks' rule. On the 26th of August 1920, the Kyrgyz Autonomous Socialist Soviet Republic within the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic RSFSR was established. The Kyrgyz ASSR included the territory of present-day Kazakhstan, but its administrative center was a mainly Russian-populated town of Vonberg. In June 1925, the Kyrgyz ASSR was renamed the Kazakh ASSR and its administrative center was transferred to the town of Kyzyl, and in April 1927 to Alma-Ata. Soviet repression of the traditional elite, along with forced collectivization in the late 1920s and 1930s, brought famine and high fatalities, leading to unrest. See also, famine in Kazakhstan of 1932–33. During the 1930s, some members of the Kazakh cultured society were executed, as part of the policies of political reprisals pursued by the Soviet government in Moscow. On 5 December 1936, the Kazakh Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, whose territory by then corresponded to that of modern Kazakhstan, was detached from the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic RSFSR and made the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic, a full union republic of the USSR, one of 11 such republics at the time, along with the Kyrgyz Soviet Socialist Republic. The republic was one of the destinations for exiled and convicted persons, as well as for mass resettlements, or deportations effected by the Central USSR authorities during the 1930s and 1940s, such as approximately 400,000 Volga Germans deported from the Volga German Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic in September to October 1941, and then later the Greeks and Crimean Tatars. Deportees and prisoners were interned in some of the biggest Soviet labor camps, the Gulag, including Altsa camp outside Astana, which was reserved for the wives of men considered enemies of the people. Many moved due to the policy of population transfer in the Soviet Union, and others were forced into involuntary settlements in the Soviet Union. The International Conference on Primary Health Care in 1978, known as the Alma-Ata Declaration, the Soviet-German War 1941–1945 led to an increase in industrialization and mineral extraction in support of the war effort. At the time of the USSR's leader Joseph Stalin's death in 1953, however, Kazakhstan still had an overwhelmingly agricultural economy. In 1953, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev initiated the Virgin Lands campaign designed to turn the traditional pasture lands of Kazakhstan into a major grain-producing region for the Soviet Union. The Virgin Lands policy brought mixed results. However, along with later modernizations under Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev in power 1964–1982, it accelerated the development of the agricultural sector, which remains the source of livelihood for a large percentage of Kazakhstan's population. Because of the decades of privation, war and resettlement, by 1959 the Kazakh had become a minority in the country, making up 30% of the population. Ethnic Russians accounted for 43%. In 1947, the USSR government, as part of its atomic bomb project, founded an atomic bomb test site near the northeastern town of Semipalatinsk, where the first Soviet nuclear bomb test was conducted in 1949. Hundreds of nuclear tests were conducted until 1989 and had negative ecological and biological consequences. The anti-nuclear movement in Kazakhstan became a major political force in the late 1980s. In December 1986, mass demonstrations by young ethnic Kazakhs, later called the Jeltoksin riot, took place in Almaty to protest the replacement of the first secretary of the Communist Party of the Kazakh SSR Dinmakhamed Konoyev with Gennady Kolbin from the Russian SFSR. Governmental troops suppressed the unrest, several people were killed, and many demonstrators were jailed. In the waning days of Soviet rule, discontent continued to grow and found expression under Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev's policy of glasnost.
Independence.
On the 25th of October 1990, Kazakhstan declared its sovereignty on its territory as a republic within the Soviet Union. Following the August 1991 aborted coup attempt in Moscow, Kazakhstan declared independence on the 16th of December 1991, thus becoming the last Soviet republic to declare independence. 10 days later, the Soviet Union itself ceased to exist. Kazakhstan's communist-era leader, Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev, became the country's first president. Nazarbayev ruled in an authoritarian manner. Emphasis was on converting the country's economy to a market economy while political reforms lagged behind achievements in the economy. By 2006, Kazakhstan generated 60% of the GDP of Central Asia, primarily through its oil industry. From Almaty, Kazakhstan's largest city, where it had been established under the Soviet Union.
Geography.
As it extends across both sides of the Ural River, considered the dividing line with the European continent, Kazakhstan is one of only two landlocked countries in the world that has territory in two continents. The other is Azerbaijan. With an area of equivalent in size to Western Europe, Kazakhstan is the 9th largest country and largest landlocked country in the world. While it was part of the Russian Empire, Kazakhstan lost some of its territory to China's Xinjiang province, and some to Uzbekistan's Karakalpakstan Autonomous Republic during Soviet years. It shares borders with Russia, with Uzbekistan, with China, with Kyrgyzstan, and with Turkmenistan. Major cities include Nur-Sultan, Almaty, Karaganda, Shymkent, Atyrau, and Oskman. It lies between latitudes 40 degrees and 56 degrees N, and longitudes 46 degrees and 88 degrees E. While located primarily in Asia, a small portion of Kazakhstan is also located west of the Urals in Eastern Europe. Kazakhstan's terrain extends west to east from the Caspian Sea to the Altai Mountains and north to south from the plains of western Siberia to the oases and deserts of Central Asia. The Kazakh steppe plain, with an area of around, occupies 1/3 of the country and is the world's largest dry steppe region. The steppe is characterized by large areas of grasslands and sandy regions. Major seas, lakes and rivers include Lake Balkhash, Lake Zaysan, the Churin River and Gorge, the Irtysh, Ishim, Ural and Sirdarya rivers, and the Aral Sea until it largely dried up in one of the world's worst environmental disasters. The Churin Canyon is long, cutting through a red sandstone plateau and stretching along the Churin River Gorge in northern Tangshan Heavenly Mountains, east of Almaty at. The steep canyon slopes, columns and arches rise to heights of between. The inaccessibility of the canyon provided a safe haven for a rare ash tree, Fraxinus sogdiana, which survived the Ice Age there and has now also grown in some other areas. Big Arch Crater, at, is a Pliocene or Miocene asteroid impact crater, in diameter and estimated to be 5 ± 3 million years old.
Natural resources.
Kazakhstan has an abundant supply of accessible mineral and fossil fuel resources. Development of petroleum, natural gas, and mineral extractions has attracted most of the over $40 billion in foreign investment in Kazakhstan since 1993 and accounts for some 57% of the nation's industrial output or approximately 13% of gross domestic product. According to some estimates, Kazakhstan has the second largest uranium, chromium, lead, and zinc reserves, the third largest manganese reserves, the fifth largest copper reserves, and ranks in the top 10 for coal, iron, and gold. It is also an exporter of diamonds. Perhaps most significant for economic development, Kazakhstan also currently has the 11th largest proven reserves of both petroleum and natural gas. In total, there are 160 deposits with over of petroleum. Oil explorations have shown that the deposits on the Caspian Shore are only a small part of a much larger deposit. It is said that of oil and of gas could be found in that area. Overall, the estimate of Kazakhstan's oil deposits is. However, there are only 3 refineries within the country, situated in Atyrau, Pavlodar, and Shymkent. These are not capable of processing the total crude output, so much of it is exported to Russia. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, Kazakhstan was producing approximately of oil per day in 2009. Kazakhstan also possesses large deposits of phosphorite. One of the largest known being the Karatau Basin with 650 million tons of P2O5 and Chilai deposit of Aktobe Phosphorite Basin located in northwestern Kazakhstan, with a resource of 500 to 800 million tons of 9% ore. On the 17th of October 2013, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative ITI accepted Kazakhstan as ITI compliant, meaning that the country has a basic and functional process to ensure the regular disclosure of natural resource revenues.
Climate.
Kazakhstan has an extreme continental climate, with warm summers and very cold winters. Indeed, Nur-Sultan is the second coldest capital city in the world after Ulaanbaatar. Precipitation varies between arid and semi-arid conditions, the winter being particularly dry.
Wildlife.
There are 10 nature reserves and 10 national parks in Kazakhstan that provide safe haven for many rare and endangered plants and animals. Common plants are astragalus, gagea, allium, carex and oxytropes. Endangered plant species include native wild apple Malus seversi, wild grape Vitis vinifera and several wild tulip species e.g., Tulipa gragii and rare onion species Allium carataviense, also Iris wilmosiana and Tulipa kaufmanniana. Kazakhstan had a 2019 Forest Landscape Integrity Index mean score of 8.23, ranking it 26th globally out of 172 countries. Common mammals include the wolf, red fox, Cossack fox, moose, argali the largest species of sheep, Eurasian lynx, Pallas's cat, and snow leopards, several of which are protected. Kazakhstan's Red Book of Protected Species lists 125 vertebrates including many birds and mammals, and 404 plants including fungi, algae and lichen.
Politics. Political system.
Kazakhstan is a democratic, secular, constitutional unitary republic. Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev led the country from 1991 to 2019. He was succeeded by Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. The president may veto legislation that has been passed by the parliament and is also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The Prime Minister chairs the Cabinet of Ministers and serves as Kazakhstan's head of government. There are 3 deputy prime ministers and 16 ministers in the cabinet. Kazakhstan has a bicameral parliament composed of the Majlis, the lower house, and Senate, the upper house. Single-mandate districts popularly elect 107 seats in the Majlis. There also are 10 members elected by party list vote. The Senate has 48 members. 2 senators are selected by each of the elected assemblies maslihats of Kazakhstan's 16 principal administrative divisions, 14 regions plus the cities of Nur-Sultan, Almaty, and Shymkent. The president appoints the remaining 15 senators. Majlis deputies and the government both have the right of legislative initiative, though the government proposes most legislation considered by the parliament.
Political reforms.
Reforms have begun to be implemented after the election of Kassym-Jomart Tokayev in June 2019. Tokayev supports a culture of opposition, public assembly, and loosening rules on forming political parties. In June 2019, on the initiative of the President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, the National Council of Public Trust have been established as a platform in which wider society can discuss different views and strengthen the national conversation regarding government policies and reforms. A law will be passed to allow representatives from other parties to hold chair positions on some parliamentary committees, to foster alternative views and opinions. The minimum membership threshold needed to register a political party will be reduced from 40,000 to 20,000 members. On the 4th of December 2005, Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev was re-elected in an apparent landslide victory. The Electoral Commission announced that he had won over 90% of the vote. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe (OSCE) concluded the election did not meet international standards despite some improvements in the administration of the election. On the 17th of August 2007, elections to the lower house of parliament were held and a coalition led by the ruling Nur-Sultan party, which included the Asar party, the Civil Party of Kazakhstan, and the Agrarian Party, won every seat with 88% of the vote. None of the opposition parties has reached the benchmark 7% level of the seats. Opposition parties made accusations of serious irregularities in the election. In 2010, President Nazarbayev rejected a call from supporters to hold a referendum to keep him in office until 2020. He insisted on presidential elections for a 5-year term. In a vote held on the 3rd of April 2011, President Nazarbayev received 95.54% of the vote with 89.9% of registered voters participating. In March 2011, Nazarbayev outlined the progress made toward democracy by Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan was reported on the Democracy Index by The Economist as an authoritarian regime. On the 26th of April 2015, the 5th presidential election was held in Kazakhstan. Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev was re-elected with 97.7% of votes. On the 19th of March 2019, Nazarbayev announced his resignation from the presidency. Kazakhstan's Senate Speaker Kassym-Jomart Tokayev became acting president after Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev's resignation. Later, Tokayev won the 2019 presidential election that was held on 9 June.
Administrative divisions.
Kazakhstan is divided into 14 regions. The regions are subdivided into 177 districts. The districts are further subdivided into rural districts at the lowest level of administration, which include all rural settlements and villages without an associated municipal government. The cities of Almaty and Nur-Sultan have state importance and do not belong to any region. The city of Baikonur has a special status because it is being leased until 2050 to Russia for the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Each region is headed by an Akim regional governor appointed by the president. District Akimi are appointed by regional Akims. Kazakhstan's government relocated its capital from Almaty, established under the Soviet Union, to Astana on the 10th of December 1997.
Municipal divisions.
Municipalities exist at each level of administrative division in Kazakhstan. Cities of republican, regional, and district significance are designated as urban inhabited localities, all others are designated rural. Kazakhstan is also a member of the United Nations, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Euro-Atlantic Partnership Council, Turkic Council, and Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC). It is an active participant in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization Partnership for Peace program. In 1999, Kazakhstan had applied for observer status at the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly. The official response of the Assembly was that because Kazakhstan is partially located in Europe, it could apply for full membership, but that it would not be granted any status whatsoever at the Council until its democracy and human rights records improved. Since independence in 1991, Kazakhstan has pursued what is known as the multi-vector foreign policy, seeking equally good relations with its two large neighbors, Russia and China, as well as with the United States and the rest of the Western world. Russia currently leases approximately of territory enclosing the Baikonur Cosmodrome space launch site in south-central Kazakhstan, where the first man was launched into space, as well as Soviet space shuttle Buran and the well-known space station Mir. Russia. Vladimir Putin. In 2019, on the 11th of April 2010, Presidents Nazarbayev and Obama met at the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington, D.C., and discussed strengthening the strategic partnership between the United States and Kazakhstan. They pledged to intensify bilateral cooperation to promote nuclear safety and non-proliferation, regional stability in Central Asia, economic prosperity, and universal values. In April 2011, President Obama called President Nazarbayev and discussed many cooperative efforts regarding nuclear security, including securing nuclear material from the BN 350 reactor. They reviewed progress on meeting goals that the two presidents established during their bilateral meeting at the Nuclear Security Summit in 2010. Since 2014, the Kazakhstani government has been bidding for a non-permanent member seat on the UN Security Council for 2017 to 2018. On the 28th of June 2016, Kazakhstan was elected as a non-permanent member to serve on the UN Security Council for a 2-year term. Kazakhstan actively supports UN peacekeeping missions in Haiti, the Western Sahara, and Côte d'Ivoire. In March 2014, the Ministry of Defense chose 20 Kazakhstani military men as observers for the UN peacekeeping missions. The military personnel, ranking from captain to colonel, had to go through a specialized UN training. They had to be fluent in English and skilled in using specialized military vehicles. President Nazarbayev said of the war in Ukraine, "The fratricidal war has brought true devastation to eastern Ukraine, and it is a common task to stop the war there, strengthen Ukraine's independence and secure territorial integrity of Ukraine." Experts believe that no matter how the Ukraine crisis develops, Kazakhstan's relations with the European Union will remain normal. It is believed that Nazarbayev's mediation is positively received by both Russia and Ukraine. In 2018, Kazakhstan signed the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. The concept of the foreign policy of Kazakhstan for 2020 to 2023. On the 6th of March 2020, the concept of the foreign policy of Kazakhstan for 2020 to 2030 was announced. The document outlines the following main points: an open, predictable and consistent foreign policy of the country, which is progressive in nature and maintains its endurance by continuing the course of the first president, the country at a new stage of development, protection of human rights, development of humanitarian diplomacy and environmental protection, promotion of the country's economic interests in the international arena, including the implementation of state policy to attract investment, maintaining international peace and security, development of regional and multilateral diplomacy, which primarily involves strengthening mutually beneficial ties with key partners, Russia, China, the United States, Central Asian states and the EU countries, as well as through multilateral structures, the United Nations, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and others.
Military.
Most of Kazakhstan's military was inherited from the Soviet Armed Forces Turkestan Military District. These units became the core of Kazakhstan's new military. It acquired all the units of the 40th Army, the former 32nd Army, and part of the 17th Army Corps, including 6 land force divisions, storage bases, the 14th and 35th Air Landing Brigades, 2 rocket brigades, 2 artillery regiments, and a large amount of equipment that had been withdrawn from over the Urals after the signing of the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe. Since the late 20th century, the Kazakhstan Army has focused on expanding the number of its armored units. Since 1990, armored units have expanded from 500 to 1,613 in 2005. The Kazakh Air Force is composed mostly of Soviet-era planes, including 41 MiG-29S, 44 MiG-31S, 37 Su-24S and 60 Su-27S. A small naval force is maintained on the Caspian Sea. Kazakhstan sent 29 military engineers to Iraq to assist the U.S. post-invasion mission in Iraq. During the Second Iraq War, Kazakhstani troops dismantled 4 million mines and other explosives, helped provide medical care to more than 5,000 coalition members and civilians, and purified of water. Kazakhstan's National Security Committee UQK was established on 13 June 1992. It includes the Service of Internal Security, Military Counterintelligence, Border Guard, several commando units, and Foreign Intelligence Bylaw. The latter is considered as the most important part of KNB. Its director is Nur-Sultan since 2002. The Joint Tactical Peacekeeping Exercise Steppe Eagle has been hosted by the Kazakhstan government. Steppe Eagle focuses on building coalitions and gives participating nations the opportunity to work together. During the Steppe Eagle exercises, the Kazakh Peacekeeping Battalion operates within a multinational force under a unified command within multidisciplinary peacekeeping operations, with NATO and the US military. In December 2013, Kazakhstan announced it will send officers to support United Nations peacekeeping forces in Haiti, Western Sahara, Ivory Coast and Liberia.
Human rights.
Kazakhstan's human rights situation is described as poor by independent observers. The 2015 Human Rights Watch report on Kazakhstan said that the country heavily restricts freedom of assembly, speech, and religion. In 2014, authorities closed newspapers, jailed or fined dozens of people after peaceful but unsanctioned protests, and fined or detained worshippers for practicing religion outside state controls. Government critics, including opposition leader Vladimir Kozlov, remained in detention after unfair trials. In mid-2014, Kazakhstan adopted new criminal executive, criminal procedural, and administrative codes, and a new law on trade unions, which contain articles restricting fundamental freedoms and are incompatible with international standards. Torture remains common in places of detention. However, Kazakhstan has achieved significant progress in reducing prison population. The 2016 Human Rights Watch report commented that Kazakhstan took few meaningful steps to tackle a worsening human rights record in 2015, maintaining a focus on economic development over political reform. Some critics of the government have been arrested for allegedly spreading false information about the COVID-19 pandemic in Kazakhstan. Various police reforms, like creation of local police service and zero-tolerance policing, aimed at bringing police closer to local communities, have not improved cooperation between police and ordinary citizens. According to a U.S. government report released in 2014, in Kazakhstan, the law does not require police to inform detainees that they have the right to an attorney, and police did not do so. Human rights observers alleged that law enforcement officials dissuaded detainees from seeing an attorney, gathered evidence through preliminary questioning before a detainee's attorney arrived, and in some cases used corrupt defense attorneys to gather evidence. Kazakhstan's global rank in the World Justice Project's 2015 Rule of Law Index was 65 out of 102. The country scored well on Order and Security Global Rank 32-102, and poorly on Constraints on Government Powers Global Rank 93-102, Open Government 85-102 and Fundamental Rights 84-102, with a downward trend marking a deterioration in conditions. The ABA Rule of Law Initiative of the American Bar Association has programs to train justice sector professionals in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan's Supreme Court has taken recent steps to modernize and to increase transparency and oversight over the country's legal system, with funding from the U.S. Agency for International Development. The ABA Rule of Law Initiative began a new program in April 2012 to strengthen the independence and accountability of Kazakhstan's judiciary, in an effort to increase transparency in the criminal justice and court system, and improve human rights. Kazakhstan intends to digitize all investigative, prosecutorial and court records by 2018. Many criminal cases are closed before trial on the basis of reconciliation between the defendant and the victim because they simplify the work of the law enforcement officers, release the defendant from punishment, and pay little regard to the victim's rights. Homosexuality has been legal in Kazakhstan since 1997, though it is still socially unacceptable in most areas. Discrimination against LGBT people in Kazakhstan is widespread.
Economy.
Kazakhstan has the largest and strongest performing economy in Central Asia. Supported by rising oil output and prices, Kazakhstan's economy grew at an average of 8% per year until 2013, before suffering a slowdown in 2014 and 2015. Kazakhstan was the first former Soviet republic to repay all of its debt to the International Monetary Fund, 7 years ahead of schedule. Kazakhstan has a GDP of $179.332 billion and an annual growth rate of 4.5% per capita. Kazakhstan's GDP stands at $9,686. Kazakhstan ranks third, after China and Qatar, among the 25 most dynamic economies of the 21st century's first decade. Kazakhstan's increased role in global trade and central positioning on the new Silk Road has given the country the potential to open its markets to billions of people. Kazakhstan joined the World Trade Organization in 2015. Buoyed by high world crude oil prices, GDP growth figures were between 8.9% and 13.5% from 2000 to 2007 before decreasing to 1 to 3% in 2008 and 2009, and then rising again from 2010. Other major exports of Kazakhstan include wheat, textiles, and livestock. Kazakhstan is a leading exporter of uranium. Kazakhstan's economy grew by 4.6% in 2014. The country experienced a slowdown in economic growth from 2014 sparked by falling oil prices and the effects of the Ukrainian crisis. The country devalued its currency by 19% in February 2014. Another 22% devaluation occurred in August 2015. Kazakhstan's fiscal situation is stable. The government has continued to follow a conservative fiscal policy by controlling budget spending and accumulating oil revenue savings in its oil fund, Samruk-Kazina. The global financial crisis forced Kazakhstan to increase its public borrowing to support the economy. Public debt increased to 13.4% in 2013 from 8.7% in 2008. Between 2012 and 2013, the government achieved an overall fiscal surplus of 4.5%. Since 2002, Kazakhstan has sought to manage strong inflows of foreign currency without sparking inflation. Inflation has not been under strict control, however, registering 6.6% in 2002, 6.8% in 2003, and 6.4% in 2004. In March 2002, the U.S. Department of Commerce granted Kazakhstan market economy status under U.S. trade law. This change in status recognized substantive market economy reforms in the areas of currency convertibility, wage rate determination, openness to foreign investment, and government control over the means of production and allocation of resources. Kazakhstan weathered the global financial crisis well, by combining fiscal relaxation with monetary stabilization. In 2009, the government introduced large-scale support measures such as the recapitalization of banks and support for the real estate and agricultural sectors, as well as for small and medium enterprises (SMEs). The total value of the stimulus programs amounted to $21 billion, or 20% of the country's GDP, with $4 billion going to stabilize the financial sector. During the global economic crisis, Kazakhstan's economy contracted by 1.2% in 2009, while the annual growth rate subsequently increased to 7.5% 5% and 5% in 2011 and 2012, respectively. Economic growth, combined with earlier tax and financial sector reforms, has dramatically improved government finance from the 1999 budget deficit level of 3.5% of GDP to a deficit of 1.2% of GDP in 2003. Government revenues grew from 19.8% of GDP in 1999 to 22.6% of GDP in 2001, but decreased to 16.2% of GDP in 2003. In 2000, Kazakhstan adopted a new tax code in an effort to consolidate these gains. On the 29th of November 2003, the law on changes to tax code which reduced tax rates was adopted. The value-added tax fell from 16% to 15%, the social tax, payable by all employers, from 21% to 20%, and the personal income tax, from 30% to 20%. On the 7th of July 2006, the personal income tax was reduced even further to a flat rate of 5% for personal income in the form of dividends and 10% for other personal income. Kazakhstan furthered its reforms by adopting a new land code on the 20th of June 2003, and a new customs code on the 5th of April 2003. Energy is the leading economic sector. Production of crude oil and natural gas condensate from the oil and gas basins of Kazakhstan amounted to in 2012 up from in 2003. Kazakhstan raised oil and gas condensate exports to 44.3 million tons in 2003, 13% higher than in 2002. Gas production in Kazakhstan in 2003 amounted to up 22.7% compared to 2002, including natural gas production of. Kazakhstan holds about of proven recoverable oil reserves and of gas. Kazakhstan is the 19th largest oil-producing nation in the world. Kazakhstan's oil exports in 2003 were valued at more than $7 billion, representing 65% of overall exports and 24% of the GDP. Major oil and gas fields and recoverable oil reserves are Tengiz with, Karachaganak with and of natural gas, and Kashagan with 7.2. Kazakhstan instituted an ambitious pension reform program in 1998. As of the 1st of January 2012, the pension assets were about $17 billion KZT2. 5 trillion. There are 11 saving pension funds in the country. The State Accumulating Pension Fund, the only state-owned fund, was privatized in 2006. The country's unified financial regulatory agency oversees and regulates the pension funds. The growing demand of the pension funds for quality investment outlets triggered rapid development of the debt securities market. Pension fund capital is being invested almost exclusively in corporate and government bonds, including Government of Kazakhstan Eurobonds. The government of Kazakhstan is studying a project to create a unified national pension fund and transfer all the accounts from the private pension funds into it. The banking system of Kazakhstan is developing rapidly and the system's capitalization now exceeds $1 billion. The National Bank has introduced deposit insurance in its campaign to strengthen the banking sector. Due to troubling and non-performing bad assets, the bank sector yet is at risk to lose stability. Several major foreign banks have branches in Kazakhstan, including RBS, Citibank, and HSBC. Cookmin and Unicredit have both recently entered the Kazakhstan's financial services market through acquisitions and stake building. According to the 2010-11 World Economic Forum in Global Competitiveness Report, Kazakhstan was ranked 72nd in the world in economic competitiveness. 1 year later, the Global Competitiveness Report ranked Kazakhstan 50th in most competitive markets. In 2012, Kazakhstan attracted $14 billion of foreign direct investment inflows into the country at a 7% growth rate, making it the most attractive place to invest out of CIS nations. In 2018, $24 billion of FDI was directed into Kazakhstan, a significant increase since 2012. In 2013, Huffington quoted the human rights activist and lawyer Denis Zhivago as saying that there is an oil fund in Kazakhstan, but nobody knows how the income is spent. Kazakhstan climbed to 41st on the 2018 Economic Freedom Index published by the Wall Street Journal and the Heritage Foundation. Kazakhstan's economy grew at an average of 8% per year over the past decade on the back of hydrocarbon exports. From January to September 2014, Kazakhstan's GDP grew at 4%. According to the results from the first half of the year, the current account surplus is $6.6 billion, a figure 2 times higher than that of the first half of 2013.
Foreign trade.
Kazakhstan's foreign trade turnover in 2018 was $93.5 billion, which is 19.7% more compared to 2017. Export in 2018 reached $67 billion plus 25.7% versus 2017, and import was $32.5 billion plus 9% versus 2017. Exports accounted for 41% of Kazakhstan's gross domestic product GDP in 2018. Kazakhstan exports 800 products to 120 countries.
Agriculture.
Agriculture accounts for approximately 5% of Kazakhstan's GDP. Chief livestock products are dairy products, leather, meat, and wool. The country's major crops include wheat, barley, cotton, and rice. Wheat exports, a major source of hard currency, rank among the leading commodities in Kazakhstan's export trade. In 2003, Kazakhstan harvested 17.6 million tons of grain in gross, 2.8% higher compared to 2002. Kazakhstani agriculture still has many environmental problems from mismanagement during its years in the Soviet Union. Some Kazakh wine is produced in the mountains to the east of Almaty. Kazakhstan is thought to be one of the places that the apple originated, particularly the wild ancestor of Malus domestica, Malus siversii. It has no common name in English, but is known in its native Kazakhstan as Alma. The region where it is thought to originate is called Almaty, rich with apple. This tree is still found wild in the mountains of Central Asia, in southern Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Xinjiang in China.
Infrastructure.
Railways provide 68% of all cargo and passenger traffic to over 57% of the country. There are in common carrier service, excluding industrial lines. Of gauge, electrified. In 2012, in July 2017, Alstom opened its first locomotive repairing center in Kazakhstan. It is the only repairing center in Central Asia and the Caucasus. As the Kazakhstani rail system was designed during the Soviet era, rail routes were designed ignoring inter-Soviet borders and to the needs of Soviet planning. This has caused anomalies such as the route from Oral to Aktobe now passes briefly through Russian territory. Astana Nur-Sultan railway station, the most modern railway station in Kazakhstan, was opened in Nur-Sultan on the 31st of May 2017. The opening of the station coincided with the start of the Expo 2017 International Exhibition. According to Kazakhstan Railways KTZ, the 120,000 square meters station is expected to be used by 54 trains a day and has capacity to handle 35,000 passengers a day. The strategy of transport development in Kazakhstan until 2015 is to build of new electrified and of existing railway stations. There is a small metro system in Almaty. A second and third metro lines are planned in the future. The second line would intersect with the first line at Alata and Zybek-Zoli stations. In May 2011, the construction of the second phase of the Almaty Metro Line 1 began. The general contractor is Almaty Imtrakaralis. Currently more than of tunnels on the extension project have been excavated. The extension includes 5 new stations, and will connect the downtown area of Almaty with Kolkaman in the suburbs. Its length will be. The construction is divided into 3 phases. The first phase, the current phase, will be the addition of 2 stations, Tsar-Iran and Moscow, a length of. The Astana metro system is under construction. It's been a long time coming and the project was abandoned at one point in 2013, but an agreement was signed on the 7th of May 2015 for the project to go ahead. The system was opened between 1959 and 1978, and the tram was a popular form of transport in Oskman, Ust-Kamenogorsk until its closure in 2018. At its peak it had 6 routes, but in the end it had 4 routes in operation. It had a fleet of 50 working tram cars. There is a tram network, which began service in 1965 with 20 regular and 3 special routes. The network has a 60% share of the local public transport market. Its fleet of 115 trams are due to be replaced, and in 2012, the city announced plans to purchase 100 new trams. There are 2 tram lines in this city. The Kogos Gateway Dryport is one of Kazakhstan's primary dry ports for handling trans-Eurasian trains, which travel more than between China and Europe. The Kogos Gateway Dryport is surrounded by Kogos Eastern Gate says that officially commenced operations in December 2016. In 2009 the European Commission blacklisted all Kazakh air carriers with the sole exception of Air Astana. Since then, Kazakhstan has consistently taken measures to modernize and revamp its air safety oversight. In 2016 the European Air Safety Authorities removed all Kazakh airlines from the blacklist, and there was sufficient evidence of compliance with international standards by Kazakh Airlines and the Civil Aviation Committee.
Mining and metallurgy.
Kazakhstan has vast deposits of uranium, precious metals, ores, alloys, ferroalloys and minerals.
Tourism.
Kazakhstan is the 9th largest country by area and the largest landlocked country. Today, tourism is not a major component of the economy. As of 2014, tourism has accounted for 0.3% of Kazakhstan's GDP, but the government has plans to increase it to 3% by 2020. According to the World Economic Forum's Travel and Tourism Competitiveness Report 2017, travel and tourism industry GDP in Kazakhstan is $3.08 billion or 1.6% of total GDP. The WEF ranks Kazakhstan 80th in its 2019 report. Kazakhstan received 6.5 million tourists in 2016. In 2017, Kazakhstan ranked 43rd in the world in terms of number of tourist arrivals. In 2000, total 1.47 million international tourists visited Kazakhstan, which was increased to 4.81 million in 2012. The Guardian describes tourism in Kazakhstan as hugely underdeveloped, despite the attractions of the country's dramatic mountain, lake and desert landscapes. The Kazakh government, long characterized as authoritarian with a history of human rights abuses and suppression of political opposition, Kazakhstan established a visa-free regime for citizens of 54 countries, including European Union and ECT member states, the US, Japan, Mexico, Australia and New Zealand. The government has set the goals that a transition to the green economy in Kazakhstan occur by 2050. The green economy is projected to increase GDP by 3% and create more than 500,000 new jobs. The government of Kazakhstan has set prices for energy produced from renewable sources. The price of 1 kilowatt-hour for energy produced by wind power plants was set at $22.68. 12. The price for 1 kilowatt-hour produced by small hydro power plants is $16.71. 09, and from biogas plants $32.23. 18.
Foreign direct investment.
Kazakhstan has attracted $330 billion in foreign direct investment (FDI) from more than 120 countries since its independence. According to the U.S. State Department, Kazakhstan is widely considered to have the best investment climate in the region. In 2002 the country became the first sovereign in the former Soviet Union to receive an investment-grade credit rating from an international credit rating agency. Foreign direct investment (FDI) plays a more significant role in the national economy than in most other former Soviet republics. President Nazarbayev signed into law tax concessions to promote foreign direct investment, which include a 10-year exemption from corporation tax, an 8-year exemption from property tax, and a 10-year freeze on most other taxes. Other incentives include a refund on capital investments of up to 30% once a production facility is in operation. In May 2014, the EBRD and government of Kazakhstan created the Partnership for Re-energizing the Reform Process in Kazakhstan to work with international financial institutions to channel $7 billion provided by the Kazakh government into important sectors of Kazakhstan's economy. The partnership will boost investment and drive forward reforms in the country. One of the factors that attract foreign direct investments is country's political stability. According to the World Bank's report, Kazakhstan is among the top 40% of countries in the world that are considered the most politically stable and free of violence. Kazakhstan also received high ratings in a survey conducted by Ernst & Young in 2014. According to EY's 2014 Kazakhstan Attractiveness Survey, investor confidence in Kazakhstan's potential is also at an all-time high with 47.3% of respondents expecting Kazakhstan to become increasingly attractive over the next 3 years. The high level of economic, political and social stability and Kazakhstan's competitive corporate tax rate were the primary reasons mentioned for its attractiveness.
Banking.
The banking industry of the Republic of Kazakhstan experienced a pronounced boom and bust cycle over 2000's decade. After several years of rapid expansion in the mid-2000s, the banking industry collapsed in 2008. Several large banking groups, including BTA Bank J.S.C. and Alliance Bank, defaulted soon after. Since then, the industry has shrunk and been restructured, with system-wide loans dropping to 39% of GDP in 2011 from 59% in 2007. Although the Russian and Kazakhstani banking systems share several common features, there are also some fundamental differences. Banks in Kazakhstan have experienced a lengthy period of political stability and economic growth. Together with a rational approach to banking and finance policy, this has helped push Kazakhstan's banking system to a higher level of development. Banking technology and personnel qualifications alike are stronger in Kazakhstan than in Russia. On the negative side, past stability in Kazakhstan arose from the concentration of virtually all political power in the hands of a single individual, the key factor in any assessment of system or country risk. The potential is there for serious disturbances if and when authority passes into new hands.
Bond market.
In October 2014, Kazakhstan introduced its first overseas dollar bonds in 14 years. Kazakhstan issued $2.5 billion of 10 and 30-year bonds on the 5th of October 2014, in what was the nation's first dollar-denominated overseas sale since 2000. In 2013, the total housing area in Kazakhstan amounted to. The Nur-Sultan policy is accepted as preventive measures needed to help steer the economy towards sustainable growth in the context of the modern global economic and geopolitical challenges, such as the 25% reduction in the oil price, reciprocal sanctions between the West and Russia over Ukraine, etc. Kazakhstan achieved its goal of entering the top 50 most competitive countries in 2013, and has maintained its position in the 2014 to 2015 World Economic Forum Global Competitiveness Report that was published at the beginning of September 2014. Kazakhstan is ahead of other states in the CIS in almost all of the report's pillars of competitiveness, including institutions, infrastructure, macroeconomic environment, higher education and training, goods market efficiency, labor market development, financial market development, technological readiness, market size, business sophistication and innovation, lagging behind only in the category of health and primary education. In 2012, Kazakhstan ranked low in an index of the least corrupt countries, and the World Economic Forum listed corruption as the biggest problem in doing business in the country. Kazakhstan has implemented anti-corruption reforms that have been recognized by organizations like Transparency International. In 2011, Switzerland confiscated $48 million in Kazakhstani assets from Swiss bank accounts, as a result of a bribery investigation in the United States. U.S. officials believed the funds represented bribes paid by American officials to Kazakhstani officials in exchange for oil or prospecting rights in Kazakhstan. Proceedings eventually involved $84 million in the US and another $60 million in Switzerland.
Science and technology.
Research remains largely concentrated in Kazakhstan's largest city and former capital, Almaty, home to 52% of research personnel. Public research is largely confined to institutes, with universities making only a token contribution. Research institutes receive their funding from national research councils under the umbrella of the Ministry of Education and Science. Their output, however, tends to be disconnected from market needs. In the business sector, few industrial enterprises conduct research themselves. One of the most ambitious targets of the State Program for Accelerated Industrial and Innovative Development adopted in 2010 is to raise the country's level of expenditure on research and development to 1% of GDP by 2015. By 2013, this ratio stood at 0.18% of GDP. It will be difficult to reach the target as long as economic growth remains strong. Since 2005, the economy has grown faster by 6% in 2013 than gross domestic expenditure on research and development, which only progressed from PPP $598 million to PPP $714 million between 2005 and 2013.
Demographics.
The U.S. Census Bureau International Database lists the population of Kazakhstan as 18.9 million May 2019, while United Nations sources such as give an estimate of. Official estimates put the population of Kazakhstan at 18.711 million as of May 2020. The 2009 population estimate is 6.8% higher than the population reported in the last census from January 1999. The decline in population that began after 1989 has been arrested and possibly reversed. Men and women make up 48.3% and 51.7% of the population, respectively.
Ethnic groups.
As of 2018, ethnic Kazakhs are 67.5% of the population and ethnic Russians in Kazakhstan are 19.8%. Other groups include Tatars 1.3%, Ukrainians 2.1%, Uzbeks 2.8%, Belarusians, Uyghurs 1.4%, Azerbaijanis, Ungans, Kalmyks, Chuvashis, Poles, and Lithuanians. Some minorities such as Ukrainians, Koreans, Volga Germans 1%, Chechens, Meskhetian Turks, and Russian political opponents of the regime, had been deported to Kazakhstan in the 1930s and 1940s by Stalin. Some of the largest Soviet labor camps Gulag existed in the country. Significant Russian immigration was also connected with the Virgin Lands campaign and Soviet space program during the Khrushchev era. In 1989, ethnic Russians were 37.8% of the population and Kazakhs held a majority in only 7 of the 20 regions of the country. Before 1991 there were about 1 million Germans in Kazakhstan, mostly descendants of the Volga Germans deported to Kazakhstan during World War II. After the breakup of the Soviet Union, most of them emigrated to Germany. Most members of the smaller Pontian Greek minority have emigrated to Greece. In the late 1930s, thousands of Koreans in the Soviet Union were deported to Central Asia. These people are now known as URL equals https://eurasianit.org/ from Samarkand to Seoul. Central Asian migrants in South Korea State equals 2021-0105 website equals eurasianit.org language equals. In the 1990s were marked by the emigration of many of the country's Russians and Volga Germans, a process that began in the 1970s. This has made indigenous Kazakhs the largest ethnic group. Additional factors in the increase in the Kazakhstani population are higher birth rates and immigration of ethnic Kazakhs from China, Mongolia, and Russia.
Languages.
Kazakhstan is officially a bilingual country. Kazakh, part of the Kipchak family of Turkic languages spoken natively by 64.4% of the population, has the status of state language, whereas Russian, which is spoken by most Kazakhs, is declared an official language, and is used routinely in business, government, and interethnic communication, although Kazakh is slowly replacing it. The government announced in January 2015 that the Latin alphabet will replace Cyrillic as the writing system for the Kazakh language by 2025. Other minority languages spoken in Kazakhstan include Uzbek, Ukrainian, Uyghur, Kyrgyz, and Tatar. English, as well as Turkish, have gained popularity among younger people since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Education across Kazakhstan is conducted in either Kazakh, Russian, or both. In Nazarbayev's resignation speech of 2019, he projected that the people of Kazakhstan in the future will speak three languages: Kazakh, Russian and English.
Religion.
Title bar equals DDD float equals right bars equals. According to the 2009 census, 70% of the population is Muslim, 26% Christian, 0.2% Buddhist, 0.1% other religions mostly Jewish, and 3% irreligious, while 0.5% chose not to answer. Islam is the largest religion in Kazakhstan, followed by Orthodox Christianity. After decades of religious suppression by the Soviet Union, the coming of independence witnessed a surge in expression of ethnic identity, partly through religion. The free practice of religious beliefs and the establishment of full freedom of religion led to an increase of religious activity. Hundreds of mosques, churches, and other religious structures were built in the span of a few years, with the number of religious associations rising from 670 in 1990 to 4,170 today. Form the majority, while others indicate that most Muslims in the country are Sunnis following the Hanafi school. These include ethnic Kazakhs, who constitute about 60% of the population, as well as ethnic Uzbeks, Uyghurs, and Tatars. Less than 1% are part of the Sunni Shafi school, primarily Chechens. There are also some Ahmadi Muslims. There are a total of 2,300 mosques, all of them are affiliated with the Spiritual Association of Muslims of Kazakhstan, headed by a Supreme Mufti. Unaffiliated mosques are forcefully closed. Eid al-Adha is recognized as a national holiday. Other Christian groups include Roman Catholics, Greek Catholics, and Protestants.
Education.
Education is universal and mandatory through to the secondary level, and the adult literacy rate is 99.5%. On average, these statistics are equal to both women and men in Kazakhstan. Education consists of three main phases: primary education forms 1 to 4, basic general education forms 5 to 9, and senior level education forms 10 to 11 or 12, divided into continued general education and vocational education. Vocational education usually lasts 3 or 4 years. Primary education is preceded by 1 year of preschool education. These levels can be followed in one institution or in different ones, e.g., primary school, then secondary school. Recently, several secondary schools, specialized schools, magnet schools, gymnasiums, lyceums and linguistic and technical gymnasiums have been founded. Secondary professional education is offered in special professional or technical schools, lyceums or colleges and vocational schools. The training and skills development programs in Kazakhstan are also supported by international organizations. For example, on the 30th of March 2015, the World Bank's group of executive directors approved a $100 million loan for the Skills and Job Project in Kazakhstan. The project aims to provide relevant training to unemployed, unproductively self-employed, and current employees in need of training. The Saimonids help the religion take root through zealous missionary work. The Golden Horde further propagated Islam amongst the tribes in the region during the 14th century. Kazakhstan is home to a large number of prominent contributors to literature, science and philosophy: Abakunin Bayuli, Mukhtar Azov, Gabit Musaripov, Kanish Satpuev, Mukhtar Shakhanov, Sakan Saifulin, Jambil Jabuev, among many others. Tourism is a rapidly growing industry in Kazakhstan and it is joining the international tourism networking. In 2010, Kazakhstan joined the Region Initiative TRI, which is a tri-regional umbrella of tourism-related organizations. TRI is functioning as a link between three regions: South Asia, Central Asia, and Eastern Europe. Armenia, Bangladesh, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, India, Nepal, Pakistan, Russia, Sri Lanka, Tajikistan, Turkey, and Ukraine are now partners, and Kazakhstan is linked with other South Asian, Eastern European, and Central Asian countries in the tourism market.
Literature.
Kazakh literature is defined as the body of literature, both oral and written, produced in the Kazakh language by the Kazakh people of Central Asia. Kazakh literature expands from the current territory of Kazakhstan, also including the era of Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic, Kazakh recognized territory under the Russian Empire and the Kazakh Khanate. There is some overlap with several complementary themes, including the literature of Turkic tribes that inhabited Kazakhstan over the course of the history and literature written by ethnic Kazakhs. According to Chinese written sources of 6th–8th centuries, Turkic tribes of Kazakhstan had oral poetry tradition. These came from earlier periods, and were primarily transmitted by bards, professional storytellers and musical performers. Traces of this tradition are shown on Orkan script stone carvings dated 5th–7th centuries that describe rule of Kultagin and Bilge, two early Turkic rulers Khagans. Amongst the Kazakhs, the bard was a primarily, though not exclusively, male profession. Since at least the 17th century, Kazakh bards could be divided in two main categories: the Ziraus, who passed on the works of others, usually not creating and adding their own original work, and the Akins, who improvised or created their own poems, stories or songs. The preeminent role in the development of modern literary Kazakh belongs to Abakunin Bayuli, sometimes Russified to Abakunin Buev, 1845–1904, whose writings did much to preserve Kazakh folk culture. Abai's major work is the Book of Words, a philosophical treatise and collection of poems where he criticizes Russian colonial policies and encourages other Kazakhs to embrace education and literacy. The literary magazine Zakap, published between 1911 and 1915 in Arabic script, and Kazakh, published between 1913 and 1918, played an important role in the development of the intellectual and political life among early 20th century Kazakhs.
Music.
The modern state of Kazakhstan is home to the Kazakh State Kumangazi Orchestra of folk instruments, the Kazakh State Philharmonic Orchestra, the Kazakh National Opera and the Kazakh State Chamber Orchestra. The folk instrument orchestra was named after Kumangazi Sajibayuli, a famous composer and domra player from the 19th century. The Musical Dramatic Training College, founded in 1931, was the first institute of higher education for music. 2 years later, the Orchestra of Kazakh Folk Musical Instruments was formed. http://srch Slav Hokadai AC JP/ Soviet national culture. The process of formation of Kazakh national music 1920 to 1942, the foundation Asalmuru is archivating and publishing historical recordings of great samples of Kazakh music, both traditional and classical. The leading conservatoire is in Almaty, the Kumangazi Conservatoire. It currently competes with the National Conservatoire in Nur-Sultan, Kazakhstan's capital. When referring to traditional Kazakh music, authentic folklore must be separated from folklorism. The latter denotes music executed by academically trained performers who aim at preserving the traditional music for coming generations. As far as can be reconstructed, the music of Kazakhstan from the period before a strong Russian influence consists of instrumental music and vocal music. Instrumental music, with the pieces QE being performed by soloists. Text is often seen in the background or program for the music, as a lot of QE titles refer to stories. Vocal music, either as part of a ceremony such as a wedding mainly performed by women, or as part of a feast. Here we might divide into subgenres: epic singing, containing not only historical facts, but as well the tribe's genealogy, love songs, didactic verses, and as a special form the composition of two or more singers in public of dialogue character and usually unexpectedly frankly in content. The Russian influence on the music life in Kazakhstan can be seen in two spheres. First, the introduction of musical academic institutions such as concert houses with opera stages, conservatories, where the European music was performed and taught, and second, by trying to incorporate Kazakh traditional music into these academic structures, controlled first by the Russian Empire and then the Soviet Union. Kazakhstan's folk and classical traditions became connected with ethnic Russian music and Western European music. Prior to the 20th century, Kazakh folk music was collected and studied by ethnographic research teams including composers, music critics and musicologists. In the first part of the 19th century, Kazakh music was transcribed in linear notation. Some composers of this era set Kazakh folk songs to Russian-style European classical music. The Kazakhs themselves, however, did not write their own music in notation until 1931. Later, as part of the Soviet Union, Kazakh folk culture was encouraged in a sanitized manner designed to avoid political and social unrest. The result was a bland derivative of real Kazakh folk music. In 1920, Alekhan Zatuevich, a Russian official, created major works of art music with melodies and other elements of Kazakh folk music, beginning in 1928 and accelerating in the 1930s. He also adapted traditional Kazakh instruments for use in Russian-style ensembles, such as by increasing the number of frets and strings. Soon, these styles of modern orchestral playing became the only way for musicians to officially play. Kazakh folk was turned into patriotic, professional and socialist endeavors. http://srch Slav. Hokkadai. AC. jp/publican/46/tauda/taudaing. HTML. From folklore to Soviet national culture. The process of formation of Kazakh national music 1920 to 1942, the current situation could be described as the effort to rediscover the traditional music as it had been practiced before the heavy influence of European musical styles. Although the quality of the performances and the striving for authenticity cannot be ignored, it is for methodological reasons important to remember that the contemporary musicians performing among traditional folk music are all well-trained professionals. Raukina Razbva, Ramazan Stamgazi. Another very challenging aspect arises from the young composers' generation, and the rock and jazz musicians, as they aim to incorporate their traditional heritage into the music they learned from the Western cultures, thus forming a new stage of ethnic contemporary classics, respectively ethnic rock or jazz music that sounds distinctly Kazakh. For the classical sector, outstanding, actor Turam Kulova, Turan Ensemble; for jazz, Magic of Nomads; for rock, Snarky, Urka, Aldo, Aldaspan.
Fine arts.
In Kazakhstan, The fine arts in the classical sense has its origins in the second half of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. It was largely influenced by Russian artists, such as Vasily Vereshchagin and Nikolai Klyudov, who intensively traveled in Central Asia. Klyudov had a particular influence on the development of the local school of painting, becoming the teacher of many local artists. The most famous of these is Abilkan Kastayev, after whom the State Museum of Art of Kazakhstan was renamed in 1984. The Kazakh School of Fine Arts was fully formed by the 1940s, and flourished in the 1950s. Local painters, graphic artists and sculptors, trained under the unified Soviet system of artist education, began active work, often using national motifs in their art. The painters O. Tansikbev, J. Shardinov, K. Telzanov, and S. Akbev, graphic artists C. Sidorkina and A. Duzalkanov, and sculptors H. Norizbva and D. Sergeyevva counted among the key figures of Kazakhstani art.
Cuisine.
In the national cuisine, livestock meat can be cooked in a variety of ways and is usually served with a wide assortment of traditional bread products. Refreshments include black tea, often served with milk, and dry fruits such as dry apricots and nuts. In southern provinces, people often prefer green tea. Traditional milk-derived drinks such as ayran, shubat and kaimiz. A traditional Kazakh dinner involves a multitude of appetizers on the table, followed by a soup and one or two main courses such as pilaf and beshbarmak. They also drink their national beverage, which consists of fermented mare's milk.
Sport.
Kazakhstan consistently performs in Olympic competitions. It is especially successful in boxing. This has brought some attention to the Central Asian nation and increased world awareness of its athletes. Dmitry Karpov and Olga Rypakova are among the most notable Kazakhstani athletics. Dmitry Karpov is a distinguished decathlete, taking bronze in both the 2004 Summer Olympics and the 2003 and 2007 World Athletics Championships. Olga Rypakova is an athlete, specialized in triple jump women's, taking silver in the 2011 World Championships in athletics and gold in the 2012 Summer Olympics. Kazakhstan's city of Almaty submitted twice bid for the Winter Olympics, in 2014 and again for the 2022 Winter Olympics. Nur-Sultan and Almaty hosted the 2011 Asian Winter Games. Popular sports in Kazakhstan include football, basketball, ice hockey, bandy, and boxing. Football is the most popular sport in Kazakhstan. The Football Federation of Kazakhstan is the sport's national governing body. The FFK organizes the men's, women's, and futsal national teams. Kazakhstan's most famous basketball player was Altsin Zamakamdov, who played for CSKA Moscow and the Soviet Union's national basketball team in the 1960s and 1970s. Throughout his career, he won multiple titles and medals at some of the world's most prestigious basketball competitions, including the Summer Olympics, the Basketball World Cup, the Eurobasket, the European Basketball Championship, and the EuroLeague. In 1971 he earned the title Master of Sports of the USSR, international class, and a year later he was awarded the Order of the Badge of Honor. Kazakhstan's national basketball team was established in 1992, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Since its foundation, it has been competitive at the continental level. Its greatest accomplishment was at the 2002 Asian Games, where it defeated the Philippines in its last game to win the bronze medal. At the official Asian Basketball Championship, now called FIBA Asia Cup, the Kazakhs' best finish was 4th place in 2007. The Kazakhstan national bandy team is among the best in the world, and has many times won the bronze medal at the Bandy World Championship, including the 2012 edition when Kazakhstan hosted the tournament on home ice. In the 2011 tournament, they were an extra time in the semi-final from reaching the final for the first time. In 2012, They were even closer when they took it to a penalty shootout. The team won the first bandy tournament at the Asian Winter Games. During the Soviet time, Dynamo Almaty won the Soviet Union National Championships in 1977 and 1990 and the European Cup in 1978. Bandy is developed in 10 of the country's 17 administrative divisions, 8 of the 14 regions and 2 of the 3 cities which are situated inside of but are not part of regions. Aksayak from Ural, however, is the only professional club. The Kazakh national ice hockey team have competed in ice hockey in the 1998 and 2006 Winter Olympics, as well as in the 2006 Men's World Ice Hockey Championships. The Kazakhstan Hockey Championship is held since 1992. Baris Astana is the main domestic Kazakhstani ice hockey professional team, and having played in the Kazakhstani National League until the 2008-09 season, when they were transferred to play in the Continental Hockey League. Meanwhile, the Kazakh torpedo and play in the Supreme Hockey League since 1996 and the Sayaka Karaganda since 2012. Top Kazakhstani ice hockey players include Nik Antropov, Ivan Kulshov and Evgeny Nabokov. Kazakh boxers are generally well known in the world. In the last 3 Olympic Games, their performance was assessed as one of the best and they had more medals than any country in the world, except Cuba and Russia in all 3 games. In 1996 and 2004, 3 Kazakhstani boxers Vasily Gurov in 1996, Bakhtiar Ratuev in 2004 and Serik Sapayev in 2012 were recognized as the best boxers for their techniques with the Valbarka Trophy, awarded to the best boxer of the tournament. In boxing, Kazakhstan performed well in the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney. 2 boxers, Bekzat Satakinov and Yermakan Ibrahimov, earned gold medals. Another 2 boxers, Bulat Zumagulov and Mukhtarkan Dildabakov, earned silver medals. Oleg Marskev, born in Zambil, representing Russia, was the WBC heavyweight champion after knocking out Hasim Rahman on the 12th of August 2006. The reigning WBA, WBC, IBF and IBO middleweight champion is Kazakh boxer Gennady Golovkin. Natasha Rogosina, representing Russia, but from Karaganda, held 7 versions of the women's super middleweight title, and 2 heavyweight titles during her boxing career. She holds the record as the longest reigning WBA female super middleweight champion, and the longest reigning WBC female super middleweight champion.
Film.
Kazakhstan's film industry is run through the state-owned Kazakh Film Studios based in Almaty. The studio has produced award-winning movies such as Minbala, Harmony Lessons, and Shl. Kazakhstan is host of the International Astana Action Film Festival and the Eurasia International Film Festival held annually. Hollywood director Timur Bekmambetov is from Kazakhstan and has become active in bridging Hollywood to the Kazakhstan film industry. Kazakhstan journalist Artur Platonov won Best Script for his documentary Sold Souls about Kazakhstan's contribution to the struggle against terrorism at the 2013 Cannes Corporate Media and TV Awards. Sergei Primov's little brother Boy won at the Central and Eastern Europe Film Festival Go East from the German Federal Foreign Office.
Media.
Kazakhstan is ranked 161 out of 180 countries on the World Press Freedom Index, compiled by Reporters Without Borders. A mid-March 2002 court order, with the government as a plaintiff, stated that Respublika worked to stop printing for 3 months. The order was evaded by printing under other titles, such as Not That Respublika. With support from the U.S. Department of State's Bureau for Democracy, Human Rights and Labor DRL, the American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative opened a media support center in Almaty to bolster free expression and journalistic rights in Kazakhstan.
UNESCO World Heritage Sites.
Kazakhstan has 3 cultural and natural heritages on the UNESCO World Heritage List: the Mausoleum of Ko Ahmed Yasawi, petroglyphs within the archaeological landscape of Tamgali, and the Korgultsin and Norizemsky reserves.
Public holidays. Membership of international organizations.
Kazakhstan's membership of international organizations includes Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Euro-Atlantic Partnership Council, Individual Partnership Action Plan, with NATO, Ukraine, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Moldova, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro, Turkic Council and the Turksoy Community. The national language, Kazakh, is related to the other Turkic languages, with which it shares cultural and historical ties. United Nations Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, UNESCO, where Kazakhstan is a member of its World Heritage Committee. Nuclear Suppliers Group as a participating government. World Trade Organization.